At 4:32 a.m., when the city was still too tired to lie to itself, a line began to form outside Studio B on La Brea Avenue. Most of the people in it were louder than the dawn. One girl in gold sequins rehearsed vocal runs under her breath, each note trembling like a peacock in a storm. A boy with blue hair practiced robot dance moves, eyes closed, counting beats no one else could hear. A mother did her daughter's makeup using the rear-view mirror of a faded Nissan. They were all there to be seen. But at the end of the line, beneath a flickering streetlight that made her shadow look even thinner than she was, stood a woman in a faded army green coat. Her boots were men's, too big, too worn. The laces dragged like they were tired of tying themselves. She didn't check her hair, she didn't practice anything, she just stood, as if she was afraid if she sat down she might not get back up. Her name was Maya Rivera, 39 years old, waitress turned widow, a mother before anything, homeless since the first week of January, and standing in line for a show that had made stars out of children and ghosts out of adults. In her hands, shaking only when no one was looking, she held a manila envelope with a single picture inside. Her son, Elijah, asleep in a hospital, bed with his mouth slightly open, like he was dreaming of things children shouldn't have to dream about, and a folded piece of paper with a hospital invoice, $83,619. Maya wasn't here for a record deal. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here because if she didn't try this, there would be no next thing. The line crept forward as the sun peeled itself over the rooftops. She didn't lift her head to it. Around her, hopefuls shouted to friends, filmed TikToks, begged the camera crews for interviews. No one filmed Maya. No one even asked her name, until a tired assistant with a clipboard paused and squinted. "You auditioning?" the girl asked, eyeing Maya's coat. Maya nodded, voice not ready yet. The assistant sighed. "Name, Maya Rivera." Clipboard, scribble, a sticker handed to her, smudged at the edges. 9:37. Stage C. Just wait over there. Maya thanked her softly, like someone taught long ago to never be in the way. She sat on a metal folding chair near the corner, knees pressed together, envelope still in her lap. Her fingers moved without thinking, tracing the edge of Elijah's photo like it could keep her from unraveling. Inside the building, bright lights flickered like artificial joy. Posters of the judges covered the walls, grinning, flawless, untouchable. The biggest among them, Vance DeMarco, whose critiques could cut careers in half. Someone nearby laughed too loudly. Another contestant did push-ups by the vending machine. Maya stayed still, watching, listening, breathing. At 12:47 p.m., her number was called. She stood, slow, like the air around her had thickened. The envelope stayed in her lap a second longer until she remembered. She slipped it into her coat, zipped it to the top, whispered to herself, "Just get through it," and walked through the door toward the audition room, into the light that did not know what it was about to witness. There's a silence that doesn't feel quiet at all. It hums, sharp and wide, like the sound of lights buzzing overhead or the tension of too many eyes watching you not move. That was the sound inside Studio C. It smelled like hairspray and ambition. Lights glared overhead, surgical and sterile. The stage wasn't even raised, just a polished black floor set under blinding beams that made everything else blur. Maya stepped into the center, her coat still zipped, boots scuffed with city salt. Across from her, elevated on a long table like judges in a Roman Colosseum, sat three figures that didn't need introduction. Vance DeMarco, arms crossed, chin resting on one fist, scanning her like an overdue bill. Luna Ray, with lashes like fans and diamonds catching every inch of light like they were meant to. And Pete O'Donnell, the comic relief, already mid-scroll on his phone. Thumbs dancing. "Name?" Vance asked without looking up from his notes. Maya Rivera. "Song? It's..." Her voice caught the way an old door does. "An original." Pete glanced up, smirked. "Of course it is." Luna tilted, her head, Her voice was syrupy but too sweet to trust. "And what do you do, Maya? You sing professionally?" "No." Maya shifted, her hands curling together. "I was a waitress." Pete leaned forward. "So you just woke up and said, 'I think I'll try being famous today'?" He chuckled. "Alone." Maya didn't laugh. She didn't explain herself. She bent down slowly and placed a single worn lyric sheet on the floor beside her. The ink had faded in places. The paper had creases like a face that had cried too often. She took 3 steps back, paused, and sang. It started like someone remembering something painful. Not to tell you, but because it couldn't stay inside any longer. The first note was not perfect. It wavered like a voice breaking from frost. But then the second came, then the third, and the crack became a chasm. She sang of nights spent in shelters that reeked of bleach and sadness, of lullabies hummed under streetlights that blinked like they were tired of watching. She sang of Elijah's hand curled around her pinky in a hospital room that cost more than her whole life, of prayers whispered not for miracles, but for mercy. She did not perform. She pleaded. Her voice cracked, broke, climbed. It filled the corners of the studio like smoke from a fire someone tried to bury too long. The camera crew stopped moving. One of them blinked too hard. Another wiped their lens even though it wasn't dirty. No one spoke. Because they weren't being entertained, they were being held hostage by grief wrapped in melody. When she finished, on a note, not high, not loud, but final, there was no applause, just that humming silence again. Except now, it felt different. Now it was reverence. Pete sat upright, slowly clapped. Not for the camera, for her. Luna pressed fingers to her lips, eyes red-rimmed. Vance stood. That never happened. He walked down from the platform, the sound of his footsteps, unreal in the space. He stopped just feet from her. "You wrote that?" he asked, voice smaller than usual. She nodded. "For Elijah." A screen behind her, dark a moment ago, flickered on. Someone backstage, maybe Trey, maybe fate, had cued. Up, Elijah's face appeared, sleeping. Oxygen tubes resting like threads across his cheeks, smiling as if in a dream that hurt less than life. Vance looked at the screen, then back at Maya. No more questions. She turned to leave, but as she passed the lyric sheet on the floor, she bent and picked it up, not quickly, not dramatically, just with care, the same way you'd pick up something holy. The video wasn't meant to be released. The show had rules, release cycles, contracts, but grief, when it sings like that, doesn't obey contracts. It was Trey, the youngest cameraman, the one who couldn't stop trembling when Maya hit that last note. Who uploaded it? No title, no edits, just a caption that read, "She didn't sing for the stage, she sang to survive." By 6 p.m., it had 3 million views. By 11:47 p.m., it had 21 million. At 2:13 a.m., the world changed again. Rihanna posted the video to her personal Instagram. No filters, no tags. Just a caption that whispered louder than any headline. "This woman doesn't need us to hear her voice. She needs us to hear her life. Maya Rivera, I felt you. I see you." It broke the internet. Her voice, bruised, cracked, but unsilenced, spread. Through cities, bedrooms, buses, and 3 a.m. scroll sessions like something sacred. A hashtag bloomed. "Sing for Elijah." And in living rooms, grown men wept into the sleeves of their hoodies, but virality is a wind without conscience. It doesn't care what it carries. By morning, the media circled like gulls over broken bread. Offers poured in. The Maya moment, they called it, a popular late-night host, known for messy tears and messier interviews, offered her a spot on Friday's episode. Said it would be raw, said he'd help the world understand her better. She declined quietly, firmly. The studio was stunned. That never happened. The host's smile cracked. Who does she think she is? Hours later, a clip surfaced on the same network's gossip arm. Exclusive, Maya Rivera's troubled past and what she didn't sing about. It featured grainy photos of her outside a shelter, a court record, trespassing 2013, no context, no correction. She had been breaking back into her own apartment after being illegally evicted. Another story emerged, custody loss in 2017. No one explained the context, that she had admitted herself to a mental health clinic after her husband's death, asking for help, and returned stronger. But empathy doesn't trend like scandal. Online, the voices turned sharper. This is emotional blackmail. She's playing us. Why was she even homeless? People like her make choices. Maya saw none of it. She had turned off the prepaid phone Pastor Ramon gave her. She was in a hospital room, just her and Elijah. He lay there, breath shallow but steady, eyes closed, skin pale but warm. The machines beside him blinked their slow rhythm. She held his hand like it was made of glass. Outside, the world argued about her motives. Inside, all she could hear was the faint sound of her son's breathing. He stirred. "Mama, I'm here, baby. Did you sing it?" "I did." "Did they like it?" She smiled. "I think they didn't know what to do with it." Elijah giggled, breath catching. "You're gonna be famous." "I don't care about that," she whispered. "Why?" "Because this," she touched his forehead gently, "this is the only thing I want to keep breathing for." He was asleep again before she could finish the sentence. Later that night, Pastor Ramon found her outside the ICU, hands clasped like someone holding grief between their palms. "There's a storm building," he said softly. She nodded. "They want to buy your story." "They already did," she said, "when they called it theirs." He offered her his phone. It buzzed with messages, offers, threats, endorsements, sympathy wrapped in strings. She scrolled once, then shut it off. "They don't want me," she said. "They want the sound I made when they thought I'd break." Back at the studio, producers argued in conference calls. The semifinals were in 2 days. They didn't know if she'd come. A leaked memo called her difficult. Another called her a potential liability. But in quiet homes across the country, strangers wrote her letters they'd never send. A mother of 3 in Nebraska taped a photo of Maya to her fridge beside a prayer. A boy in Seoul made a piano cover of her song. And in a homeless shelter in Detroit, a woman whispered, "She sang for all of us." Maya didn't plan her next step. She prayed. She walked. And on the morning of the semifinals, as cameras readied, as seats filled with noise and neon, she arrived, still in the coat, still in the boots, but taller somehow. Not in posture, in presence, like someone who had walked through fire and learned not how to escape the burn, but how to carry its light. The building pulsed like a heartbeat. Outside, fans screamed into cameras. Influencers posed beside the show's glittering banner. Inside, the stage glowed gold and violent under 1,000 lights that knew how to flatter everything except the truth. Tonight was the semifinal of Talent Show USA. Live broadcast, 42 million viewers, a countdown clock ticking in the lower third of every screen. Backstage, hairspray clouded the air. Contestants warmed up. Vocal coaches buzzed around like flies in silk. Everyone was being turned into something shinier than themselves. Everyone except her. Maya sat alone in a folding chair near the rear exit. Same coat, same boots. A quiet figure with no entourage. A shadow that carried its own gravity. Stagehands walked by and slowed, like they could feel something pulling from her. Not noise, not performance. Presence. She wasn't rehearsing, she was remembering. Her son's hand in hers, his voice, "Sing like you do when I'm scared." The assistant director called her name. He spoke softer than usual. "Maya, you're next?" She stood, smoothed the envelope in her pocket one last time, not for luck, for grounding, and walked the long hallway into the light. The crowd was roaring from the act before her, a teen magician with sparks and lasers. Confetti still floated in the air. But when Maya stepped into the spotlight, everything hushed. It wasn't fear. It wasn't awe. It was recognition. Like the room understood it had to make space for something sacred. Even the cameras panned slower. Even the lights softened. On the judging panel, Vance DeMarco folded his hands. Luna Ray swallowed hard. Pete. The comic didn't joke. No one asked her name this time, no one asked what she'd sing. They already knew it wasn't about that. Maya nodded to the orchestra. Just once, then the room took its breath. And she gave them hers. Ave Maria. Not the version piped into shopping malls. This was unvarnished, unprocessed. The first note rose like a candle lit in a cathedral after a funeral. Pure. Not perfect, but pure. Her voice moved slowly, deliberately, as though each sound carried the weight of 100 unspoken prayers. She didn't sing to them, she sang beyond them, through them. The Latin syllables spilled from her lips like something ancient and aching. Eyes closed, she stood completely still, except for her mouth, her breath, and the invisible thread connecting her to somewhere above pain, above memory, somewhere near healing. In the audience, a girl clutched her chest and whispered, "I can feel her." Backstage, someone dropped their headset and didn't bother picking it up. In homes across the world, children stopped fighting. Fathers stopped pacing. Old women reached for tissues they didn't know they needed. She didn't hit high notes. To impress, she let them ache. And when she reached the final Amen, she didn't hold it. She let it go, softly, as if it belonged to someone else now. And maybe it did. The room stayed still for one full breath. Then, an eruption, not of noise, of release, a standing ovation that shook the lights. Judges on their feet, Luna with both hands pressed to her heart, Pete openly crying. Even Vance, the man who never blinked, had tears at the corner of his eyes. He leaned forward to his mic. Maya. His voice was quieter than usual. Not for drama, for reverence. You didn't just sing. You reminded us what we've been trying to forget. He stopped there. No one clapped again. Not yet. They just looked at her, and for the first time, really saw her. Backstage, she passed a monitor flashing reactions. Social media already boiling. Goosebumps. My God. She just baptized that? Stage. Not a singer, a soul in motion. She doesn't belong in a show, she belongs in history. Producers hovered. Phones rang. Contracts were being printed before she cleared the hallway. But Maya walked past them all. Not cold. Not angry. Just beyond needing them. She stepped outside. Cool night air greeted her and she smiled. Not because she'd won anything, but because for the first time, she hadn't been reduced. Not to a sob story, not to a headline. She hadn't been made a symbol. She had become a song. Maya didn't win. Not officially. When the envelope was opened and the lights burst gold and the trophy was lifted high, it wasn't her name they called. The crowd roared for the winners. A youth dance troupe with storybook smiles and a routine sharp enough to slice glass. They deserved it. They were brilliant. Maya stood and clapped. No tears, no trace of disappointment. Because when the applause died down and the cameras powered off and the set began to dissolve back into scaffolding and wires, she was still. Standing. And the world had already changed. Not because of a vote, because of a voice. 3 days later, her name appeared in a different kind of headline. Maya Rivera to perform at Carnegie Hall. It was just one night. But that night had a wait list longer than any stars. UNICEF called next. They didn't ask for a performance. They asked for her voice. In a video campaign for displaced children, her original song played over images of war-torn streets and tiny shoes left beside closed borders. The caption read, "You don't need a microphone to be heard, just truth." It reached 60 million people. One evening in the quiet church office where this story first caught flame, Pastor Ramon opened the door to find a man waiting in a gray suit. No logo, no cameras. He represented the ARC Foundation, a private collective of anonymous donors who funded medical relief for children in underserved communities. They had seen her performance. They had read the comments. They had watched and felt and decided. Elijah's medical debt, Erased, his treatment plan covered, a year's housing secured, a small sunlit studio apartment in Echo Park. No catch, no interviews, no strings, just grace. When Maya was told, she didn't react the way people expected. No scream, no jump. She just folded in on herself, slowly, gently, as if the weight she had carried for years had been carefully lifted away and she could breathe with both lungs again. Their new home wasn't much. The walls needed repainting. The fridge hummed like an old man dreaming. But sunlight spilled through the windows in the afternoon. And on the first night, Elijah slept in a real bed. She sat on the floor beside him, back resting against the wall, watching the way his chest rose and fell like waves that finally found the shore. "Mama," he whispered, barely awake, "I'm here." "You didn't win the prize." She paused, smiled. "No, baby." He blinked, thoughtful in that way children are. More perceptive than they should be. "But you're happy." "I'm free," she whispered, and in that room filled with chipped paint, secondhand blankets, and honest quiet, that meant more than any spotlight ever could. Weeks passed, people forgot. That's what they do. Another scandal, another viral clip, another voice on another stage. But in small corners of the world, her echo lingered. A choir in Dublin arranged her original song for a charity concert. A single mother in Brazil named her newborn Maya. An old man in Chicago, who hadn't spoken to his daughter in 8 years, sent her the video with a one-line message. "I'm sorry." Her name faded from the trending tab, but it carved itself quietly into the places that mattered. Months later, she stood again in front of a microphone. No cameras, no producers, just a benefit concert in a dusty theater in Boyle Heights. She wore a simple dress. The coat that once wrapped her pain now hung on a nail in the closet. She stepped forward, took a breath, and sang. This time not from fear, not from desperation, but from a place that had learned how to carry beauty through the fire and not be burned. The audience didn't stand. They didn't clap wildly. They just closed their eyes and listened. And for the first time, she wasn't trying to survive. She was simply singing, and that at last was enough. If this story touched you, don't let it stop here. Hit like if Maya's voice stayed with you after the last note. Click subscribe to hear more stories that don't just entertain. They remind us we're still human. Comment below. Have you ever felt invisible until someone finally listened? Your words might be the light someone else needs tonight. And share this video with one person who needs to remember, you don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to keep singing.